Well, are you ready to get into Yah's Word today? I am as well. I want to invite you to open your Bibles with me to Matthew chapter 24, and we're going to begin with verse 15 in just a moment. And we're going to be talking today about whether the anti-Messiah is a spirit that comes to dwell in the hearts of people or a real live flesh and blood man. There seems to be a lot of debate about that right now and quite a bit of confusion. Some people say the anti-Messiah is a spirit that comes to dwell in the hearts of people. And they get that from a couple of verses that I'm going to share with you here. We're going to look at those verses and see if that is actually truth or if there's just a lot of confusion around those verses. Let's begin with Matthew chapter 24, starting with verse 15. It says, "So when you see the abomination that lays waste," this is Yeshua speaking to his taught ones, "when you see with your eyes the abomination that lays waste." So he is talking to his taught ones, but he's talking to his taught ones in general throughout the generations. When his taught ones in the generation that this takes place actually sees with their eyes the abomination that lays waste, in other words, the image of the anti-Messiah, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. You can read about that in Daniel chapter 11, verse 31. Notice it says, "Set up in the set apart place," or in the temple. He who reads, let him understand. "Then let those who are in Yehudah flee to the mountains." And so when you see this image set up in the set apart place, then flee to the mountains. And they say there's no temple on Temple Mount. So this must be talking about a person's body, because Shaul or Paul writes, and we're going to look at that verse in just a minute, that your body is the temple of the set apart Spirit of Yah. And so this must be talking about a spirit dwelling in the bodies or in the hearts of people. And so let's go over to 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and begin with verse 19. And we'll see specifically what Shaul says here. It says in verse 19, "Or do you not know that your body is the dwelling place or the temple of the set apart Spirit, which is in you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own, for you were bought with a price." And so it appears on the surface that Shaul is saying the human body is the temple of the set apart Spirit of Elohim. But Shaul is actually speaking to a specific group of people. He's saying, "Or do you not know that your body is the dwelling place of the set apart Spirit, which is in you?" Now, who is he talking to? Let's look at verse 9 of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and we'll see exactly who Shaul is speaking to. It says, "Do you not know that the unrighteous shall not inherit the reign of Elohim? Do not be deceived, neither those who whore, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor homosexuals, nor thieves, nor greedy of gain, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers shall inherit the reign of Elohim. And such were some of you, but you were washed." And so Shaul is speaking to those who were washed, but you were set apart. He's speaking to the set apart, but you were declared right in the name of the Master Yeshua and by the Spirit of our Elohim. And so he's speaking to those who have been declared right. So only believers' bodies are the temple of the set apart Spirit of Elohim. Not every person. only believers' bodies. And so if you have embraced the concept that the anti-Messiah is a spirit that comes to dwell in the bodies of all people, you're not seeing what this passage says. And so go with me over to Revelation chapter 13. I want to show you that. We're going to look at verse 7 and 8. And it says, "And it was given to him to fight with the set apart ones and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation and all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world, shall worship him." And so his impact, his influence, his deception is over all people, not just believers. And so this shows us, and I'm going to show you more scripture, that the anti-Messiah is not a spirit that comes to dwell in the bodies of all people, but instead a real flesh and blood man. And so go over to Ephesians, and I want to show you an interesting passage of scripture there. Speaking of the spirit that is at work in the bodies of unbelievers. All right, let's take a look at that. That's an interesting passage. Ephesians chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. Notice what it says. "And you were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the ruler of the authority of the air," that's Hasatan, "of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience." So if you say that anti-Messiah is a spirit that's going to come and enter into the bodies of people, well, this passage tells us that the spirit of Hasatan is already at work in the lives of the disobedient. That's a very interesting passage. The spirit of Hasatan is already at work in those who do not believe and who do not obey. Now, when you do believe in Yeshua, then you can receive the spirit, the breath, the wind of Elohim. And the spirit of Elohim then comes and dwells within your body, and your body becomes the temple of the set apart spirit. All right, now go with me over to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and we're going to begin with verse 1. And this is going to show us that the anti-Messiah is a real flesh and blood man. It says, "As to the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah and our gathering together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to become easily unsettled in mind or troubled." Now, we want to stop right there, and we want to discern what the context of the entire passage is. The context is the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah and our gathering together to him. That's important because we're going to refer back to it in just a moment. So let me read it again. "As to the coming of our Master Yeshua Messiah," those events that surround his coming, "and our gathering together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to become easily unsettled in mind or troubled, either by spirit," a deceptive spirit, "or by word," something that someone has said, "or by letter, as if from us," a forgery, "as if the day of Yah has come," or has already come. "Do not be easily unsettled in mind or troubled, thinking that the day of Yah has already come." Verse 3, let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first. The first thing that has to happen as the events begin to transpire, as we get closer to the time when Yeshua returns, is the falling away. The falling away is when those who proclaim to be believers fall away from the truth. They fall away from Torah, and they begin to embrace abominations, things that the Scripture says are clearly abominable to Yah. We already see that happening. Entire denominations of people who proclaim to be believers are dividing over things like abortion, same-sex marriage, and the like. And so we see a large contingency of people who claim to be believers embracing abominations. The Bible clearly states these things are abominations, and there is a great falling away. And it says the falling away is to come first. It must be completed before the next thing transpires. All right. And the next thing is, and it says, and the man of lawlessness. Notice it says the man of lawlessness. It doesn't say the spirit of lawlessness. It says the man of lawlessness, the one who forsakes Torah, the one who lives like there is no law, the one who is disobedient to the instructions of Elohim. The man of lawlessness is to be revealed or to be seen. In other words, you're going to be able to see him with your natural eyes if you're alive in that time. Notice it says the son of destruction. You don't use a word like son or daughter when you're talking about a spirit. The son of destruction describes a man who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim or that is worshiped. This man wants to be worshiped. He wants to be considered Elohim. He wants to take the place of Elohim so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place. A better rendering of that would be the temple. We're talking about the rebuilt temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. So anti-Messiah is a man who wants to be thought of as Elohim. He wants to take the place of Elohim. So if you were going to declare yourself Elohim, where would you go to do it? Well, there's only one place on the entire earth that has that kind of significance. And that place is Temple Mount in Yerushalayim. If you want the world to think you are Elohim, where are you going to declare that very thing? You're going to go to Temple Mount, and you're going to go into the rebuilt temple, and you're going to declare that you are Elohim. And that's what Shaul is saying, that the anti-Messiah, the man, the anti-Messiah, that's exactly what he's going to do. Verse 5, do you not remember that I told you this while I was still with you? And now you know what restrains for him to be revealed in his time. This is the what that restrains. There's a what that restrains, a what that must come first, and there is a who that restrains. All right? This is the what. And now you know what restrains for him, speaking of the anti-Messiah, to be revealed in his time. What must come first before the anti-Messiah is revealed? We just read it. It's the falling away. The what that restrains is the falling away. The falling away must come first, and then the anti-Messiah will be revealed. He'll be seen. For those of us who are walking in the light and in revelation, we'll recognize him as the anti-Messiah. For those who are walking in the darkness, they may see him as the Messiah. They may see him as Elohim. That's his intention. But the falling away must come first. And it's taking place even as we speak. Verse 7, for the secret of lawlessness, your Bible may say the mystery of lawlessness, is already at work. And Shaul is saying that in his day, the mystery or the secret of lawlessness was already at work. The secret of lawlessness is a spiritual dynamic headed up by Hasatan and demon forces. And the goal of the mystery or the secret of lawlessness is to create an environment of lawlessness into which the anti-Messiah can rise and be accepted and approved of. You see, if we were all following Torah and walking in biblical righteousness, living the way that Yah wants us to live, walking in his ways, if the anti-Messiah was to rise up in that environment, he would be completely rejected. So, for him to be accepted, there must be an environment of lawlessness. And so the devil and demon forces have been hard at work, creating an environment of lawlessness into which the anti-Messiah can rise and be approved of and accepted. And so that dynamic is at work even now. And it is that dynamic that's at the root of the falling away. Because you have those who proclaim to be believers in Yeshua, who are being influenced by the secret of lawlessness, and they are turning away, they are falling away from Torah and from the truth, and they are embracing abominations. They're embracing lawlessness, and they are helping to create that environment into which the anti-Messiah will rise. For the secret of lawlessness is already at work, only until he who now restrains. Who is the he who now restrains? The anti-Messiah. And what does he restrain? He restrains the coming of Messiah, because that's the context of these verses. The coming of Messiah Yeshua and our being gathered up together to him. And so, he who now restrains is the anti-Messiah. He restrains the coming of Messiah. The anti-Messiah must come first before Messiah returns. Only until he who now restrains comes out of the midst of the people, out of the masses. We see in Revelation 13 that the beast that represents the anti-Messiah comes up out of the sea. The sea always represents the masses of people. He comes up out of the midst. Verse 8, and then the lawless one, notice he's the lawless one, shall be revealed or seen. You can't see a spirit. You can't see a spirit dwelling in the heart of a person. This is not talking about the anti-Messiah as a spirit. This is talking about the man, the anti-Messiah. The lawless one shall be revealed, or he shall be seen, whom the master shall consume with the spirit or the breath of his mouth, his word, and bring to naught with the manifestation of his coming. The Messiah, the man, is going to come to consume the anti-Messiah, the man, with the spirit or the breath of his mouth, with his word, and bring him to naught. You don't have the Messiah coming to bring an end to a spirit. You have the Messiah coming to bring an end to the man, the anti-Messiah. Verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan. He's going to be filled with the spirit of Hasatan, empowered by Hasatan, with all power, deceptive power, and signs and wonders of falsehood, false signs and wonders, and with all deceit of unrighteousness, in other words, deceiving people into unrighteousness, into disobedience, in those perishing because they did not receive the love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And so it says, the coming of the lawless one, the man of lawlessness, is according to the working of Hasatan. He's filled with the spirit of Hasatan, but he is not a spirit. He's a man. And he's going to have deceptive powers. He's going to be able to perform lying signs and wonders, and he's going to deceive people unto unrighteousness, disobedience. Why? Because they did not receive the love of the truth. All right. Now, let's go over to 1 Timothy chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 5. 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 5. Again, this is going to substantiate what I've said about Messiah being a man, filled with the spirit of Elohim, empowered by Elohim to accomplish the will of Elohim, and the anti-Messiah, the antithesis of Messiah, the opposite of Messiah is the anti-Messiah, and he also is a man filled with the spirit of Hasatan, sent to do the will of Hasatan. Notice it says here in verse 5, for there is one Elohim, the Father, and one mediator between Elohim and men, notice, the man, Messiah, Yeshua. And so the anti-Messiah is also a man, not a spirit. Let's go over to 1 John chapter 2, and we're going to pick up with verse 18. 1 John chapter 2, starting with verse 18. Notice what Yohanan says here. Little children, it is the last hour, he declares. And as you have heard that the anti-Messiah is coming. Yohanan knew that the anti-Messiah was a man. And he knew that he is coming. We're talking about the anti-Messiah of the end times. He goes on to say, even now, many anti-Messiahs have come. He's not talking about spirits. He's talking about people. Many anti-Messiahs have already come. People filled with the spirit of Satan, doing the will of Satan, not filled with the spirit of Elohim. Even now, many anti-Messiahs have come. This is how we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, not spirits, people. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would have stayed with us. He is not talking about spirits here. It is obvious he's talking about people, but he considered those people anti-messiahs, filled with the spirit of Satan. But in order that it might be manifest that none of them were of us, they weren't a part of us. They went out from us because they weren't of us. We're talking about people here, not spirits. And then we go over to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. And we're going to pick up with verse 24. Notice what it says here. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and for your set-apart city to put an end to the transgression and to seal up sins and to cover crookedness and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up vision and prophet and to anoint the most set apart. And so this is talking about what the Messiah is going to accomplish through his death, burial, and resurrection, and what's going to take place even in the last days. Know then, and understand from the going forth of the command to restore and build Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim was destroyed by the Babylonians. And so this prophecy is saying from the time that the decree is made to rebuild Yerushalayim until Messiah, the Prince, is 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 69 weeks, or 69 7-year periods, or 483 years. So from the time that the decree was made to rebuild Yerushalayim until Yeshua and his death, burial, and resurrection was 483 years. That's already taken place. It shall be built again, speaking of Yerushalayim, with streets and a trench, but in times of affliction. So the city is going to be rebuilt. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off and have not. So this is a prophecy. After the 62 weeks, we're talking about 2 tranches of time, the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks. So when the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks are completed, then it says here that Messiah shall be cut off. This is a prophecy of the execution of Messiah. And the people of a coming prince, speaking of the Romans, shall destroy the city. So the city is going to be destroyed again, like it was during the time of the Babylonian conquest, when they came in and destroyed the city and the temple. The city is going to be destroyed again, and the temple, the set-apart place. And the end of it is with a flood, and waste are decreed, and fighting until the end. All right, so we've talked about what was going to take place in that 69-week period, or that 483-year period, but there are 70 weeks. So the last week, which is a 7-year period, is in the future. We read about it in verse 27. And he, speaking of the anti-Messiah, shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week for 7 years. The anti-Messiah is going to establish a covenant. It appears that it will be between Israel and the Muslims who control the Temple Mount. It will be a 7-year peace treaty, peace covenant. And in the middle of the week, after 3.5 years, he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering. All right, this tells us that the temple is going to be rebuilt. So this covenant is going to allow for Israel, for the religious Jews, to rebuild the temple. This is their structure. This is a brick and mortar building on Temple Mount. It doesn't mean that believers will discontinue being the dwelling place of the set-apart Spirit of Yah. It just means that religious Jews are going to rebuild the temple on Temple Mount. They're going to start up the daily sacrifices. After 3.5 years, anti-Messiah is going to have enough of all those sacrifices. He wants to be worshiped. He wants to be considered Elohim. So he's going to put an end to those sacrifices. And his false prophet is going to then erect an image of anti-Messiah. That is the abomination that lays waste, the image of the anti-Messiah in the rebuilt temple. And the false prophet is going to demand that the world worship him. And the religious Jews are not going to worship him. And so the wrath of anti-Messiah is going to be poured out against Israel because of that. It says, and in the middle of the week he shall put an end to slaughtering and meal offering, and on the wing of abominations he shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one who lays waste. This is not talking about a spirit. A spirit cannot confirm a covenant. Only a man can confirm a covenant. A spirit doesn't put an end to the daily sacrifices. Only a man can do that. And it says that on the wing of abominations, he, the man, shall lay waste, even until the complete end, and that which is decreed is poured out on the one, the man, who lays waste. And so let's go over to Daniel chapter 12 and continue talking about the man, the anti-Messiah. It says here, now at that time Michael shall stand up, the great head, who is standing over the sons of your people. He is the chief messenger, the angelic being over the people of Israel. And there shall be a time of distress. That's the last 3.5 years of the covenant. The last 3.5 years, that period is called the time of Yaakov's distress or trouble. And that's when the anti-Messiah brings together a multinational military force and attacks the nation of Israel because the religious Jews would not worship him. So it's going to be a time of distress, such as never was since there was a nation until that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. And there is a plan for the deliverance of Yehudah when the anti-Messiah is about to destroy the remnant of Yehudah. Yeshua is going to arrive. He's coming as their Messiah to save them. That's what they're expecting. They've always expected the Messiah to come and save them, to conquer the enemies of Israel. And Yeshua comes. However, the scripture says they will look upon him whom they pierced, and they will mourn for him as one who mourns for an only son. In other words, they will recognize that he is Yeshua, the one who died on the tree, because they pierced him. They'll realize that. And they will perform teshuvah, and they will turn to the Master in true obedience, and they will be delivered. Look at verse 11. It says, and from the time that which is continual, that's the daily sacrifices, is taken away, and the abomination that lays waste is set up. That's the image of the anti-Messiah that will be set up in the temple, the rebuilt temple, is 1,290 days, approximately 3.5 years. All right. So go with me over to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. And we'll pick up with verse 5. This is speaking of the anti-Messiah. And he was given a mouth, speaking great matters and blasphemies. Well, a spirit doesn't need to receive a mouth. This is talking about a man. And he was given authority to do so 42 months, 3.5 years, the final 3.5 years of the 7-year covenant. And he opened his mouth, this is a man, in blasphemies against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tent and those dwelling in the heaven. And it was given to him to fight with the set-apart ones and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation, and all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb from the foundation of the world shall worship him. And that's what he wants. He wants to be worshiped. It says, and I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And so this is speaking of the false prophet. The false prophet has two horns like a lamb. In other words, it appears he's going to be a religious person, a man of peace, a lamb, a man of belief, a lamb. But he speaks like a dragon. So he's a religious person, but he's empowered by Hasatan. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast, the anti-Messiah, in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, to worship the anti-Messiah, whose deadly wound was healed. And so Messiah was a man, and Messiah had a prophet who went before him, Yochanan, the immerser. He was a man. The anti-Messiah is a man, and the anti-Messiah has a false prophet who is also a man. Verse 13, and he does great signs, so that he even makes fire come down from the heaven on the earth before men. And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of those signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. And so it appears that there is an assassination against the anti-Messiah. He receives a mortal wound, and just from looking at it, that wound killed him. No question about it. And yet he survives. And when he survives, then the global press, they laud him, they praise him. They say he's invincible. Who can fight against him? He's a miracle worker. And so the false prophet will use that to tell the people, you need to worship this man because he's a miracle worker. He's Messiah. Worship him. And there was given to him to give spirit to the image of the beast. Speaking of the false prophet, giving spirit to the image, the abomination that lays waste, the image of the beast, the anti-Messiah, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. And he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their foreheads, not the right hand and the forehead, but on the right hand or the forehead, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. And so anti-Messiah is going to be over the global market, the global financial system. There's going to be a meltdown of all the individual financial systems, and anti-Messiah is going to bring together a global financial system, and you won't be able to buy or sell unless you take the number of the beast, the mark of the beast. Verse 18, here is the wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, not the number of a spirit, the number of a man. And his number is 666. And so there are other scriptures that we could talk about today that makes it absolutely clear that the anti-Messiah is not a spirit that's coming to dwell in the hearts of people, but a real life, flesh and blood man. He is empowered by the spirit of Hasatan, but he has come to do the will of Hasatan. He has come to be worshiped. He has come to deceive the masses. And you must know that he is a man. And the falling away must come first. And when that is completed, then he will be revealed. He's going to establish that 7-year covenant. The Jews are going to be allowed to rebuild their temple. After 3.5 years, the people are going to be saying, peace and safety in that first 3.5 years. Because this anti-Messiah is going to be one who appears to be a peacemaker, and he's solving all kinds of problems. He's bringing safety to the people, peace and safety. But after that first 3.5 years, he is going to want to be worshiped, and he's going to stop the daily sacrifices, and the image that lays waste, the abomination that lays waste, the image of the anti-Messiah is going to be set up in the rebuilt temple, and the false prophet is going to demand that the world worship him. And you must not worship him. You must not take his mark. If you do, you will be tormented forever, the scripture says. Instead, believe upon Yeshua, walk in the ways of Yah, be filled with the breath of Yah, make every preparation necessary to be able to endure that 7-year period, especially the last 3.5 years. And Yeshua said, he who endures to the end shall be saved. Hallelujah.